Crescendo is the most recently released quest in the Rec Room. It's a gothic horror adventure into Dracula's castle. In this series, I'll review each Rec Room quest. I chose Crescendo first because it's currently Halloween. Originally, it was going to be Golden Trophy, but the timing couldn't be more perfect. This is from the perspective of a solo player. It doesn't make much difference, but some aspects can be more difficult, so my opinions may vary. In my last video, I was thanking you for 400 subs, and 2 weeks later, we're at over 700. Thank you so much. I didn't think I'd get this far, but let's keep going. Let's destroy 1k in a timely manner. Onto the video. Crescendo is definitely the most unique quest in Rec Room. There are checkpoints that you can return to after a death, and the reason for them is because Crescendo is easily the longest quest. Including all deaths, it took me 50 minutes to beat. My first time beating Crimson solo took about 30, so there's a big difference. Those checkpoints are greatly appreciated. Starting off the game, you're on a pumpkin farm, and you get pitchforks and shovels to take down these pumpkin spices. The farm is next to a burning village named Burningburg. That's like calling the Titanic sinking boat. The spices' attacks are able to be blocked with your weapons, like in other Lost Skulls. But unlike Isle, you can attack them before blocking, so it's kind of useless, because they instantly die anyway. The currency in Crescendo is silver, and it's dropped from enemies, pumpkins, candle stands. You use the silver to purchase cosmetics and consumables in the gift shop. After all the spices are taken down, a gate opens and you walk to the town. Here we see fire bats. They behave identically to the imps in Golden Trophy and Crimson. Like all other quests, if you get hit once by anything, you die, and have to try again. We see the third enemy, named the Bone Maid. They throw a burst of 3 bones at the player. They can be trouble in large groups, but with just one it's not a problem. After a few waves, we're given a whip, which is the most reliable weapon in the game, as it does not break or run out of ammo. It has a learning curve that is satisfying to pull off. You have to swing it to cast up the line and pull it back to crack it. If you crack it when it's at maximum distance, it'll have a larger and stronger attack. It incentivizes you to keep a distance and do long, deliberate attacks, but it still works well at close range. There are small chests that drop random items that include shotguns, flintlocks, crossbows, rum jugs, pitchforks, shovels, or silver. It changes up the formula, and you can't really rely on a weapon drop, and it adds a bit of luck to get a good drop. All of the previous enemies could be taken out in close range, but after the building, we see a Bone Maid up on a ledge. It requires the player to get them down or attack from far away. We see a variant of the bat called the Dash Bat. They charge up a dash and swoop at you. After taking on more waves, you walk up to a carriage. The first level does its job and it does it well. The player learns how to use melee weapons and the whip. We are introduced to half of the basic enemies in the game and it prepares the player for the rest of it. Story-wise, I think the player is meant to be a farmer whose village is burnt down by Dracula's fire bats. Then the player rides a carriage to his castle and challenges him, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Alright, the next level takes place in a moving carriage. You can't leave it or you get teleported back. This one is one of the most unique levels in all of the quests, as all the enemies come to you. Here we see these barrel dogs that charge at the player. It takes a fair amount of multitasking to defend both sides of the cabin, and it can get really stressful at the end. This level is extremely short and not that challenging, so it's pretty forgettable, but it's a novel idea. The carriage crashes near Dracula's castle and the level ends. You spawn in and see the wreckage of the carriage, and spot the marksman enemy. They can be really annoying and overwhelming in mass, but they don't track your movement, so if you constantly move around, they won't hit you. They die to one strong whip attack, but most of the time not to a normal one. This makes the player keep their distance and feels really satisfying to pull off. You see this barrel with a blunderbuss on it, and if you whip it, it'll go flying. Same goes for any other item with coiled rope on it. You make your way up to this bridge, which has some pretty intense combat, with multiple marksmen, and little space to dodge. You really have to run up to them if you want to get them with your whip. Using the crossbow in tandem with the whip is incredibly cool. And then we get this epic shot where you look up at the castle, the logo of the quest shows, and this part of the tower falls. It's a cool moment, as far as I know, the only time this happens in all the quests. Once all the enemies are taken down, a light shines on this gate, and you whip this plank off, and it falls to the ground. Do not get crushed by it, you will die. After a few more enemies, we reach the first checkpoint. Every couple of levels, you're taken back to this hub area. Everything about this place is great. You can practice your whip skills on the chandeliers, beams, and candles. The music is amazing. This is the most vibrant and beautiful place I've ever seen in Rec Room. It's also a place where you can rest and take a sigh of relief, as all your silver collected is banked, and you won't restart after death. Even though you can get in and out of the hub in like 10 seconds, I spent more than a few hours just chilling here. I often forget that the quests take place in a school or college campus. This next level makes it painfully obvious, as there are paintings of staff members and there's this teacher's office with the golden trophy and a jumbotron screen in it. Here is a lecture hall with desks in front of a stand. It's a really cool touch. In Golden Trophy, the hallway levels barely look like a school. The only thing that does are the lockers. I would like to see a quest that wasn't restricted by the school setting. Jumbotron almost achieves this and is the most different, but the floors are still made of wood and the walls and ceiling still looks like a school. Here we get the first mini-boss, Maid Warlord. The enemies spawned are always more of a challenge than the actual boss. She throws bones that explode after a few seconds. The challenge comes from juggling all these bats while damaging the boss. The best strategy seems to be taking out all the enemies first, then the boss is pretty free. Just stay away from the bones that are thrown and keep moving around. When I took it on this playthrough, I juggled both at the same time, and as you can see, it got pretty frantic. Not worth it at all. The Chamber of Knowledge starts with this wide open room with the marksmen spawning up high and the other enemies spawning down below. If you don't take out the marksmen fast, they can be in trouble. A gate opens and you have to whip off the planks. There are puzzles where you have to press in these books and secrets are revealed. There are like 3 secrets and they're all painfully obvious. This wave of enemies makes you juggle taking care of the projectile enemies that spawn up here and the others down below. After the enemies are killed, you try to go through a gate, but it tells you to do some reading, so you have to find which book opens up the gate. It was novel the first time I did it, but it's the same book every time. There are these grappling hook beams and chandeliers. I feel like they just get in the way when I'm trying to whip enemies. After that, it's time to fight a marksman mini-boss. The book in the library says it is called Ranger Roy, but the Crescendo wiki says Mayor Marksman. I don't know which one to believe, I guess the game, but Ranger Roy himself is easy. He just spawns every type of enemy, and like I said, the grapple hook mechanic almost got me killed here. Towards the end, it got insanely close, like I'm dodging bones, marksmen, bats, then the boss rapid fires at my non-existent feet. Once all the enemies are dead, you can just snipe him with the whip. He's a fun mini-boss with a decent challenge, definitely my favorite in the whole game. After all that, we're back at the checkpoint, always a sight for sore eyes. The next door is on the bottom floor, and these next few levels are definitely the hardest in Crescendo. If you can make it through those, then you are set for the whole game. The Garden of Sorrows is a foggy nighttime level. The challenge comes from the overwhelming amount of enemies and your inability to see them coming, especially stray bullets from marksmen. This first section, I recommend you rush to the end and camp there. Let the enemies come to you. There'll be some maids and marksmen that you'll need to approach up here. As long as you strafe, you should be able to kill them easily. There's this cool Easter egg where you high-five this grave and an enemy is revived. It's a cool Easter egg and it's always novel to show people. The next section isn't too bad, but it's in the open, so make sure you don't miss the marksman spawn. The next section contains a spicy mini-boss, named President Pumpkinhead. Definitely interesting, unlike the boss. He's the most basic boss you could think of. You just run around this tombstone and whip him to shreds. He is always a breeze, and the only thing to worry about are the fire bats he spawns. This next level gives me PTSD, the inverted ballroom. It's the school but turned upside down. I have no idea how they would pull that off. It starts off fine with a few basic enemies, but it really ramps up at the end. There is a spike pit with suspended tables above it, and there are these marksmen and maids that constantly spawn in. You have to get them before they overwhelm you, and there are normal enemies spawn below you. Then the bat mini boss spawns. It's called the Baron Fire Bat. It shoots a row of fireballs. On its own it's not too bad, but that's not the problem. The marksmen still spawn during the fight, so you have to awkwardly kill them mid-fight or just run away and take the boss with you. This level is an absolute nightmare. Recording, I died 3 times on it, but that means the worst is over with. We made it back to the checkpoint and it's time to enter the Lower Sanctum. This level is really dark and it's reminiscent of the Tomb of the Giants in Dark Souls 1. You have to carry this torch with you through these timing challenges. The stakes are low because they don't actually kill you. It's pretty dumb considering the steam and Crimson Cauldron kills you, but these massive swinging axes don't. But I'm not complaining. There is this maze with arrow traps, just like in Dark Souls. It's a cool moment. You have to duck down and time your movements. You get rushed by a bunch of enemies in the section afterwards. They are pretty easy if you let them come to you. Then we go through 2 more swinging axes, then we get 2 chill skeletons on camping chairs. It's useless but a cool detail. Another neat detail is this cannon goblin from Crimson. While you're walking down, you hear an animal munching on some meat. It's menacing and makes the player anticipate facing a monster. You make it to this hole and the munching is getting louder. You drop down and see there's a massive dog. He's called King Barrel Dog. This fight, there are no enemies, so it is so free. You just circle around a pillar and whip him. After that easy fight, we go back to the castle and it's time for the final boss. You walk to the top of the room and enter the door. The final boss is Dracula. He isn't the most difficult boss I've seen, but he can have some unfair moves, like teleporting behind you and instantly killing you. The checkpoint before the boss is amazing to have, but if you're going for S+ in solo, you can't die once. So I can imagine how annoying it'd be to die to him. You have to direct these mirrors at him and hit him with sunlight. Each time you hit him, he separates into a bunch of smaller bats. Then a bunch of enemies spawn, kill the enemies and the bats and he'll come back for the next phase. 3 hits and he dies. The strategy I have is to run around the middle until he spawns, then get to a mirror and hit him. After each hit, I run to the stage because that's where the marksmen spawn, and in an open area like this, they can be a pain. I died a couple of times here, but eventually took him down. Crescendo was one of my least played quests, but now it's one of my favorites. I love the art design and vibrant colors. The bosses are cool and there are a bunch of them. There are a bunch of unique levels and enemies. The weapons are fun to use, the whip is hard to pick up, but is insanely satisfying to use. Definitely my favorite quest in Rec Room so far. I think that the checkpoints made it a bit too easy. I feel like there are too many of them. I don't like how the game gets infinitely easier after the inverted ballroom. After that, it's basically a victory lap. Oh, that's all my thoughts on the game. In the next video, I will cover Quest of the Golden Trophy. Thank you for watching to the end, and goodbye.